The alien narrator hails from an empire so vast and ancient that it has shaped the course of galactic history for millennia. Their kind, having mastered the art of observation and control, has seen countless species rise and fall, some assimilated into their dominion, others quietly eliminated before they could ever pose a threat. To them, dominance is not a question of strength, but inevitability. They do not conquer with brute force, but with knowledge, with strategy, with the quiet hand of unseen influence. Among their duties, one remains paramount: studying newly emerging civilizations and determining their fate. Those deemed useful are integrated into the empire, their cultures reshaped to serve the greater whole. Those deemed dangerous are dealt with before they have the chance to disrupt the order of things. When reports came of a small, developing world orbiting an average star, home to a race of sentient bipeds, the Empire dispatched an observer to assess its potential. The designation was simple: humans. At first glance, they were nothing remarkable. Their bodies were frail, prone to disease and decay. Their lifespans were short, barely enough to achieve anything of significance before time itself erased their existence. Their societies were fractured, warring amongst themselves, unable to maintain a singular vision of progress. They allowed emotions to dictate their actions: rage, sorrow, passion, pride, impulses that made them unstable, inefficient, reckless. By all metrics, they were an evolutionary accident, an anomaly that had somehow stumbled into intelligence. The narrator, stationed in a hidden orbital research station, began compiling reports, monitoring their development, confirming the Empire's long-held beliefs. Humans were primitive, short-sighted, biologically weak. They relied on crude mechanical tools to survive, unable to harness their own biology for self-improvement as other species had. They fought wars over meaningless divisions, wasted resources on personal greed, and clung to archaic traditions that hindered their own progress. But then, inconsistencies began to appear. Despite their fragility, they endured injuries that should have been fatal. Despite their short lives, their knowledge advanced at an unprecedented rate. Despite their conflicts, their societies thrived in chaos rather than crumbling under it. Other species, when faced with destruction, either succumbed to despair or sought refuge in submission. Humans did neither. They did not break. They adapted. They thrived. And for the first time in centuries, the narrator felt something unfamiliar. Not curiosity, not fascination, but a quiet, growing unease. Something about humans wasn't right. Something about them didn't make sense. The alien had spent months observing humanity, convinced that the Empire's initial assessment was correct. By all conventional logic, humans should have been a short-lived anomaly, a species too emotionally volatile, too biologically fragile, too internally divided to ever become a significant force in the galaxy. Their wars, their disasters, their constant self-inflicted suffering, it should have all been proof of their inherent weakness. No species that thrived on chaos could ever last. But the longer the alien watched, the more the assumption began to unravel. Humanity did not collapse under pressure. It adapted. Every disaster, be it war, famine, economic ruin, or natural catastrophe, was not an end, but a beginning. Empires on their planet had risen and fallen, yet each collapse only fueled the rise of something stronger. When their cities burned, they rebuilt them bigger, faster, more resilient than before. When war wiped out generations, those who remained became deadlier, more efficient, more prepared for the next conflict. They did not just survive hardship. They learned from it, absorbed it, and used it as fuel. The alien had watched wars unfold countless times on other planets. Most species followed predictable patterns. Battle strategies remained unchanged for centuries. Armies relied on traditions and doctrine, and outcomes were often decided by superior technology or numbers alone. Humans, however, fought differently. Their battles were never static. They learned from mistakes in real time, adapting mid-battle, shifting strategies as needed. They studied their enemies, adjusting their weapons, tactics, and formations not over decades, but in the span of hours, days. A battle lost today was a lesson for tomorrow. A species that should have been defeated by sheer inexperience somehow always returned stronger. This behavior extended beyond war. The alien observed individual humans who had suffered great loss. Family, home, limbs, even their own freedom, only to emerge with a renewed sense of purpose. Other species would falter, sink into despair, retreat from hardship. Humans took pain and turned it into motivation. The more the alien watched, the more the pieces refused to align. The data contradicted itself. Humanity should not be advancing the way it was. Its progress should have been hindered by its emotional instability, its fragile biology, its violent history. And yet, with every struggle, it only seemed to grow stronger. The alien had been certain of humanity's weakness. But now, for the first time, doubt crept in. What if they weren't weak? What if they were something else entirely? The alien observer had spent months monitoring humanity from a distance, compiling evidence, expecting to confirm that their resilience was simply a temporary anomaly, a statistical outlier, not an evolutionary trait. But the data refused to align with that assumption. Humans adapted to hardship in ways no species should. They learned too quickly. They recovered too efficiently. They refused to break. This was no accident. This was something deeper. The Empire demanded concrete proof. If a species defied expectation, it had to be tested. A plan was set in motion. Using long-range abduction protocols, a group of humans was discreetly taken. Individuals from different backgrounds, cultures, and ages. Some were soldiers, others civilians. The testing environment was carefully constructed, designed to observe their biological, psychological, and emotional responses to extreme conditions. Other species had been subjected to these tests before. The results were always the same. Prolonged isolation led to despair. Hunger led to compliance. Pain led to surrender. The humans, however, did not react as expected. When placed in solitary confinement, they did not descend into hopelessness. They talked to themselves, created mental exercises, even devised imaginary friends to stave off madness. Their minds did not break under isolation. They adapted. When subjected to environmental extremes, cold, heat, deprivation, they hacked solutions together using scraps, repurposing their surroundings with an ingenuity that defied logic. They turned suffering into innovation. When given limited food and resources, other species would compete, hoard, fight for survival. The humans? They shared. They strategized. They rationed. They formed alliances where there should have been selfishness. Most disturbingly, even when pushed to the edge of death, they did not beg for mercy. They did not surrender. One of them laughed. A low, broken, painful chuckle as one of the human test subjects lay against the cold steel wall of his containment unit, his body battered, his breath ragged. The observer watched from behind the glass, confusion creeping into his mind. Why was this one laughing? He should have been begging, crying, pleading. Instead, the human lifted his head, eyes unfocused, but filled with something the alien could not understand. That all you got? The alien felt something strange then, something uncomfortable. Not curiosity, not fascination, something else. For the first time in his long existence, he felt fear. Because whatever humans were, whatever made them like this, was not natural. It was terrifying. The test should have broken them. The protocols were designed from centuries of accumulated research on how sentient beings respond to suffering, deprivation, and pain. Every known species had limits, thresholds where the body and mind surrendered to their own weaknesses. But the humans had no such threshold. No matter how the tests were modified, they refused to break. When isolated, they adapted. When wounded, they endured. When deprived, they innovated. Even the ones who should have succumbed to despair found ways to push forward. This defied every fundamental principle of biological behavior. The alien observer, now deeply unsettled, ordered a full genetic analysis. If humans could not be understood through behavior alone, perhaps the answer lay within their biological structure. The results were incomprehensible. Human DNA was unlike anything the Empire had encountered before. At first glance, their genetic code appeared chaotic, inefficient, a mess of random mutations and unstable sequences. Other species had perfected their genetics over time, refining their evolutionary paths for maximum efficiency. Humans, however, were biologically unstable. Yet somehow, this very instability was their greatest weapon. Every other species evolved towards specialization, adapting to one environment, one ecosystem, one survival strategy. But humans? They evolved to survive anything. Their immune system was a war machine, adapting to pathogens faster than any controlled biological model should allow. Their neural networks rewired themselves constantly, allowing for rapid learning, problem-solving, and abstract thinking. Pain, stress, trauma, these didn't weaken them. They triggered responses that made humans stronger, faster, more efficient. Most species had a natural biological equilibrium, a balance that ensured stability. Humans had no such balance. Their bodies were designed to push beyond limitations, beyond comfort, beyond safety. Their greatest strength wasn't their intelligence. It wasn't their technology. It was their ability to suffer and grow stronger from it. The alien observer, now fully aware that something was horribly wrong, tried to make sense of it. No species should be capable of adapting to suffering as a survival mechanism. Evolution should have made them brittle, should have forced them to stagnate. But humans weren't like other species. They had never stopped evolving. And if they reached the stars, if they spread beyond their planet, nothing would be able to stop them. The alien observer could no longer deny it. Humanity was an anomaly, a terrifying deviation from the expected path of evolution. Their genetic instability, their relentless adaptability, their psychological resilience. These were not advantages that other species possessed. These were weapons. But the true horror was not what humanity had already become. It was what they could become. The Empire had spent millennia charting the rise and fall of civilizations, determining the precise moment when species reached their peak, when they stopped growing, when they stagnated. Some developed advanced technology, but lost their drive for expansion. Others became comfortable in their dominion, turning inward instead of outward. Even the most aggressive, warlike species eventually reached their natural limit. Humans had no such limit. Every time they were knocked down, they came back stronger. Every time they faced annihilation, they rebuilt better than before. Every war, every disaster, every setback only propelled them forward. There was no peak, no plateau, just endless, terrifying progress. The alien turned his attention to Earth's recent history. He saw how they had transformed war from a tool of destruction into a crucible of innovation. How each conflict forged new technology, new strategies, new ways to outthink their enemies. He saw how they had turned even their most primitive weapons into stepping stones for greater destruction. If humans were given time, if they reached the stars, the Empire had never faced an enemy like this. They had crushed countless civilizations before they could become threats. But humanity was different. Their adaptability made them impossible to contain. Their aggressive curiosity ensured that no secret could stay hidden from them forever. And worst of all, they had already begun to look beyond their world. They were building starships. They were studying the cosmos. They were reaching toward something greater. They had no idea what lay beyond the void. But it didn't matter, because when they got there, they would adapt. They would learn. And then they would conquer. The alien finally understood why humans were so dangerous. They weren't just another civilization. They weren't just an empire in the making. They were the first species that would never stop growing. If humanity left Earth, nothing in the galaxy would ever be able to stop them. The alien observer sat in silence, staring at the endless streams of data before him. Humanity was a threat, not in the way the Empire had understood threats before. Not an invading army, not a rival empire, not a rebellion waiting to be crushed. They were something far worse. A species that could not be broken. A species that grew stronger from destruction. A species that would never stop evolving. The Empire had spent centuries eliminating potential dangers before they could rise. Civilizations that advanced too quickly were dismantled. Races that showed signs of rapid expansion were assimilated or erased before they could ever become a problem. That was the way of the galaxy, the natural order of dominance. But humanity did not follow natural order. And now, the Council would decide their fate. The Observer presented his findings before the Empire's rulers. Cold, indisputable facts laid bare in the data. Humanity was accelerating at an uncontrollable rate. They had survived near self-destruction and emerged stronger, more advanced, more ambitious. They had pushed past limitations that should have contained them. They were not just surviving, they were growing. The council chambers, ancient and vast, were filled with figures who had governed the galaxy for millennia. Empires had risen and fallen beneath their watch. Their reach extended to the furthest edges of known space. They had ended entire civilizations before they could become problems. But as the observer spoke, he saw something he had never seen in them before. Uncertainty, doubt, fear. A species like humanity had never existed before. The idea of a race that thrived under suffering, that used every failure as fuel for its own advancement. This was beyond anything they had ever encountered. Can they be controlled? One of the council members asked. The observer hesitated. He had studied them for years. He had seen them resist, adapt, and retaliate. He had watched them endure everything thrown at them. And his answer was the same one that had haunted his thoughts since the experiments. No. A silence settled over the chamber. Then came the next inevitable question. Can they be eliminated? The observer hesitated again, this time for a different reason. Eradication had always been the simplest solution. But humanity was unlike any species before. If the Empire failed to destroy them completely, if even a handful survived, history had already proven what would happen next. They would learn, they would rebuild, and they would come back stronger. Attacking humanity was not an act of war. It was the beginning of their evolution. The observer took a slow breath before speaking his next words. If we strike first, we must not fail. Because if they did, nothing in the galaxy would be able to stop what came next. The decision had been made. Humanity was too dangerous to be left unchecked. The Empire's rulers, despite their unease, had come to a singular conclusion. Humanity must be eradicated before they reach the stars. But deep down, the observer knew the truth. It was already too late. As he left the council chambers, the weight of realization pressed down on him. Humanity had already begun their ascent. Their technology was primitive, their reach limited, but that would change. It was changing. The Empire had been watching humanity, but had they ever considered the possibility that humanity had been watching them? The observer reviewed recent findings. Unusual radio transmissions, shifts in human military infrastructure, hidden projects beyond the public eye. Humanity was expanding outward, preparing, pushing the limits of their knowledge. And worse, they were looking for something. They were looking for them. He accessed one last classified file, intelligence reports from deep space reconnaissance teams. It should have been nothing. It should have been ignored. But the moment he saw it, his blood ran cold. A small fleet of human vessels, crude in design, but unlike anything seen before, had been detected moving beyond their solar system. Their path was deliberate, their technology advancing faster than any predictions had estimated. They weren't waiting to be found. They were coming. The observer felt a hollow fear settle in his chest. The Empire had ruled for millennia, erasing threats before they could rise. But humanity wasn't just a threat. They were a force of nature, an unstoppable tide. And the greatest mistake the Empire had ever made was believing they had been the ones studying humanity. Because all this time, humanity had been studying them. And now, the countdown had begun. Humanity was coming. And the galaxy would never be the same again.